Hey, I'm Sam. Welcome to Brickwall Pictures. It's awards season, and I've been looking at a bunch of the contenders for this year's Best Picture and Best International Feature Film categories. If you had told me that City of God or Elite Squad: The Enemy Within took home Oscars for Brazil, I would have believed you. However, it wasn't until last year's I'm Still Here that Brazil won its first Academy Award. But now the country has a shot at taking down the Best International Feature Film category 2 years in a row.
Aqui a gente faz mambembe, jeitinho brasileiro.
The Secret Agent is Brazil's submission to the 2026 Academy Awards. And from all of the buzz that this film has gotten, as well as its cultural relevance and high level of quality on every front, I'm quite confident that this will end up securing one of the 5 nomination spots. You can call this a prediction. It's going to happen. The Secret Agent tells a story that is far more down-tempo and meditative than one might expect from the title. The film does pack heaps of tension and thrills in the back half, but it's a slow burn that really takes its time getting into thrilling territory, and its primary goals lie elsewhere. This is a film that is far more interested in scrutinizing the subjects of perception, memory, and corruption than it is delivering on action and excitement. The film was written and directed by Kleber Mendonça Filho, sorry for that pronunciation, who is known for the films Bacurau and Aquarius. This was my entry point to Filho's work, but I will absolutely be seeking out his earlier films when I get the chance. And actually, I did try to watch Bacurau previously, but the copy I received did not have English subtitles, so it was a non-starter. All of Filho's directorial choices in The Secret Agent feel thoughtfully considered and executed with ingenuity and panache, while his script makes bold choices in terms of structure and even bolder choices in regards to withholding information and leaving things unsaid or unseen. For his excellent work on the film, Filho went home with the Best Director award from Cannes. The film was also one of the 22 films nominated for this year's Palme d'Or, but it lost to It Was Just an Accident, which I will be getting to soon. Wagner Moura stars as Armando, though he's more commonly referred to as Marcelo, the alias that he's forced to live under as a political refugee who's banned from travel and marked for death within the dictatorship that was in control of Brazil back in 1977. It takes a while for Armando's goals to become apparent since he plays everything so close to the vest. Principally, he's motivated by a desire to get his son out of the dictator-controlled region, to find proof of the existence of his mother, which is more difficult than one might expect, and also ties wonderfully into the film's multifaceted exploration of memory, and just to simply be able to live and be true to himself without threat from this corrupt government. This is a complex character that's played with a great deal of subtlety and restraint, where warmth, fear, and outrage are all lying just below the surface. It's a role that was written specifically for Moura, and it's hard to imagine anyone else being able to convey the same level of depth and nuance that he brings to the role. And that seems to be a sentiment shared by many, as Moura won the Best Actor prize at Cannes.
Eu tô ameaçado de morte. Eu não teria vindo aqui pedir sua ajuda se eu não achasse que era uma situação perigosa.
The Secret Agent is a film that you might get more out of if you go into it with some background knowledge of the 70s Brazilian political landscape. Without that background, the film still does a pretty good job of conveying everything that you need to know internally, such as with its great Udo Kier scene, Rest in Peace. Kier leaves a major impression in his only scene, in which he plays a Holocaust survivor who pretends to instead be a wounded Nazi soldier in order to be treated better by the local police, which really tells you all that you need to know about the mindset of the police and the broader regime of the time. The film is set in 1977, but it's just as much about more recent Brazilian politics. Filho told Ion Cinema that the film was heavily inspired by the events during and just before the rule of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, and the feelings that those events caused. Now, this isn't the proper venue to cover the numerous fascist crimes of Bolsonaro, but know that he was just sentenced to 27 years in prison for plotting a coup to avoid giving up the presidency after losing his re-election campaign, which went as far as involving planned assassinations of his opposition, according to the BBC. And as they told The Hollywood Reporter, Filho and Moura suffered direct consequences from the fascist Bolsonaro regime, as they were both vocal critics of the administration and were targeted as a result.
But what really connected Kleber and I was politics, because from 2018 to 2022, Brazil was under a very, how can I put it?
A dark period.
Yeah, a very bad time in our history. And then I think that was sort of the genesis of, and Kleber and I suffered a lot because everyone who was vocal against the government, or like any fascist government, they would attack universities, press, artists. And I directed a film called Marighella. It was really hard to release the film in Brazil. Kleber suffered lots of consequences of the way he behaved there too. So we got together. And I think that this film is sort of comes from that moment, and that's not by chance that he sets the film during the dictatorship in 1977.
Before The Secret Agent, it had been over a decade since Moura was last able to act in Portuguese. And in case it's not obvious, that was not really by choice. Moura described it as being extremely liberating to be able to act in his native tongue again, as well as it bringing a sort of clarity to his acting process. Filho also faced tremendous pressure from the Bolsonaro presidency, especially in regard to his 2016 film Aquarius. As reported by Variety, Filho used the film's premiere at Cannes to stage a protest against the coup d'etat in Brazil, which was new at the time. That's when Bolsonaro took power, as opposed to now he's trying not to give up power. In retaliation of his protest, the overtaken Brazilian government stifled and sabotaged the release of Aquarius, and the film was also prevented from serving as Brazil's submission to the Academy Awards that year. Instead, the far less acclaimed but politically non-subversive Little Secret stole its spot after multiple other potential nominees all voluntarily withdrew from the running in solidarity with Filho. His next film, Bacurau, also led to persecution from Bolsonaro's government, to the extent that a lie was concocted to allegedly extort $500,000 from Filho under the guise of reclaiming ill-spent government production money, which Filho denies, of course. Corruption is on this film's mind, as it were. It isn't spelled out in explicit detail, but The Secret Agent draws a line between the modern corruption of Bolsonaro and the corrupt regime of the 70s, with only the latter being showcased directly. Without getting too specific so as to avoid spoilers, the film makes use of a more modern plotline that sort of takes the place of a framing device, though its introduction into the film is significantly delayed until much further into the runtime than you would normally get with a frame narrative. It's a fascinating and outside-the-box storytelling choice, and it accomplishes a lot for the film, including bringing the exploration of governmental corruption across generations into sharp relief. Technology might evolve, a movie theater might become a blood bank, but some things never change. Luckily, Brazil has changed for the better, it seems, with Bolsonaro off to prison. Filho described Brazil's future as looking bright again for storytellers and artists of all stripes.
Yes, I think Brazil has gone back to behaving and acting in real life like a democracy. This week, the former president is actually being tried for his crimes. And it does look like he will go to jail by the end of the week. So this is a really interesting time in Brazil. And in terms of being an artist and working with culture and expressing your political views, it's just a normal part of life.
To see Brazilians seeing themselves represented in artists, because for a long time during Bolsonaro's period, we were so attacked with so many, lies and horrible things, that to see Brazilians rooting for Fernanda Torres and for Walter Salles and for the film and seeing and thinking like these people represent us for me was the most special thing about that.
An age of creative oppression and censorship has finally been brought to a close, and both I'm Still Here, which was also targeted for government suppression but less successfully, and The Secret Agent, they're both shining examples of this seismic shift for Brazilian cinema. With all of that context in mind, The Secret Agent is a clear triumph. But how is it as a film in isolation if for some reason all of that vital context was stripped away? Well, it's excellent, and it really is one of 2025's best films in terms of just pure cinematic value. Even though the film is preoccupied with showcasing corruption, it still makes room to showcase the beauty of Brazilian culture at the same time. And all of it adds tremendously to the vibrancy of the setting. Another director telling this story of dictatorship and corruption may have left the setting looking entirely oppressive and bleak, but Filho finds little moments of joy that remind us of why better times are worth fighting for and that it's never a lost cause, even as the death toll during the Carnival festivities approaches triple digits. That absurdly high death toll is something that the local police revel in within the film. We don't see much of that death happening outright, but we do see the aftermath or the removed consequences of it, and death is a presence that can be felt all around the film. The opening scene features a corpse on the ground at a gas station covered over with cardboard, and we learn that it's been there for days already with nobody doing anything about it. Now, you could call this corpse a plot point, but it's actually treated more like set dressing, meaning death is a part of the setting of the secret agent in a literal sense. Elsewhere in the film, Armando continues to see and hear about deaths happening all around, whether it's a little girl run over by a bus or a severed leg found in the mouth of a shark, which ends up leading to an out-of-left-field comedic sequence that I won't spoil, but is a clear highlight of the film. It's awesome. For a long stretch of the film, arguably a bit too long, interesting things happen around Armando without the man himself being particularly active. We're kept in the dark as to his motives and goals for quite a while in a way that I'm not sure benefits the film. The craft on display sets a continuously high bar, with striking images mined from naturalistic setups and a killer soundtrack providing several memorable needle drops. But our protagonist was left feeling a bit unmoored throughout the early stages of the film. At over 2.5 hours long, The Secret Agent is a pretty hefty film, and it's certainly in no rush. It embraces a slow burn vibe, and it really takes its time getting all of the pieces in motion. The Secret Agent, it's not one for short attention spans. It demands patience of you out of the gate, and then it richly rewards that patience later on.
Não sou uma pessoa violenta. Mas esse cara, eu matava ele com martelo.
There's one scene that takes the form of an interview of sorts, and it's in this conversation that all of the character motivations and goals that I had been craving finally came to light. And from that point on, the remainder of the film's hefty runtime breezed by so fast that I was blindsided when it ended, when I realized it was wrapping up, because I had expected there to be another 40 or so minutes left. Any hesitations I had early on were wiped clean as soon as Armando's backstory was finally elucidated and the threat against him was brought into focus. The remainder of the film is tense, thrilling, unpredictable, and exceptionally well made. I'm going all the way to a 9 out of 10 with this one. Thanks for watching. You can see more reviews in the playlist that's on screen right now. I'll see you next time. So long.